Mm-hmm.
So another question for you, kind of switching gears on you a little bit, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Trust in a relationship and marriage. Let's say
Yeah.
once that trust is broken, man go out and cheat, the woman goes out and cheat. How does one comes back from that, or do they come back from that?
Yeah. The best way to come back from trust being broken and betrayal is you got to show up every day. You got to be transparent about what happened and show up every day and prove to either party that you're not going to do those things again. And that's a hard thing to do, because a lot of people, once they've been betrayed, man, there ain't no turning back. And some people that just close off on people when they do that. So you have to be consistent in your actions. You have to be transparent in what you're doing, and sometimes you just have to prove to the other person that you are, sincerely sorry for what happened, and you're ready to move on. But it takes time. Like that's the thing that a lot of people don't. It
Yeah,
doesn't work out because they don't realize this may take 2 or 3 years for me to actually trust you again. Man, betrayal is it's a strong emotion. We don't talk enough about it.
right, right.
But when you confided in somebody and they step out on you and cheat on you, and don't let it be like somebody you know or a friend or somebody they suspect and they get it right, it just makes the betrayal even worse. So
Yep.
it's important, when that trust is broken, if you want to maintain in a relationship with that person, that you start that both people come clean about what's happened, be sincere in their apology, and then their actions have to speak louder than their words.
Yeah. So is it from the standpoint of, like they say, men cheat because it's physical, women cheat because it's like mental. So talk about that for a second. Which way does it go? Is it a little bit of little mixture of both, or
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both for both. Because a lot of men cheat because they feel like they're not getting what they want to get at home. Now, some men cheat because they just have access and they can. That's very true, but that's not most reason why men cheat.
that's right? Yeah.
Most most of the time, men end up cheating because it's physical because they're lacking the physicality at home. But when you are lacking the physicality at home, that starts weighing in on your mental. Why she don't want me? Oh, I ain't good enough for her. I'll show her. Like that's all in your mind. Like that's insecurity just from a masculine frame. And what ends up happening is we go out there and we get something. Now we say it's physical from a man's perspective because a lot of times we don't always build that emotional connection to the person we end up having sex with. It can be very transactional for many men. Now on the flip side with women, that's a little different because women usually lead sexually from an emotional standpoint. Now for some women, it's straight physical, and a lot of women are just nymphos, like they're just trying to get it done, and that's it, and that's okay. They want to get their freak on, let them get their freak on. But typically, when women cheat, there is an emotional attachment because that's how they lead with their intimacy. So, that level of insecurity because their husband ain't paying attention to them or they ain't touched them in months, or, they start thinking, well, did I gain too much weight? Am I not ugly? This person don't like me no more. And then they go get that validation from somewhere else. And especially in today's society where there's a lot of empowering messages for women all over the place,
Yeah.
don't be surprised if your wife, if you ain't giving her the attention she needs, that she steps out and starts having a hot girl summer and being a city girl, getting it cracking with her mega knees. Like it can pop off really easily. And there's people out there that do not care about sleeping with your wife. Actually, they want to because it gives them a little extra boost in their confidence.
So listen, let me just reset, because this, I'm telling you, family, this conversation is designed to help marriages and talk about it. I think we don't have enough healthy dialogue around it. Brandon, let's talk about how the construct of marriage. We talked about that. So I've been married 15 years.
Hmm.
I've never seen what a successful marriage looked like from in the household growing up. Right, grew up in a single parent
Yeah.
household. So, like I told my wife, we're driving on the road that we're paving. Everything we're experiencing from a marriage perspective is new. So we just made a point to always come to the table and be transparent and talk about it up front. That's how we kind of navigate our situation. Like, hey, what's going on in your mental? And I
Right.
remember when the way I grew up, it wasn't showing love to women in that way, right? It was the way I seen how men treated women. It wasn't in a marriage type of environment. So I grew up with not trusting women. So when I got married, it was always, where you going? What you doing? You know what I mean? And then I was always getting my feelings. I would never communicate. It was all mental. But then I learned to make sure I express myself, because men, we have feelings too, right? We want to be pampered too. We want to feel a certain type of way too from our woman. So from that standpoint, what does successful marriages look like? Because we can talk about, all these different things, and sometimes a successful marriage can look like failure, but what does it look like from an overall standpoint, from your lens, Brandon?
Mm-hmm. Great question. I think so. I'll say this, and then I'll give what I think are some commonalities. A successful marriage is very subjective to the couple, because some people, there may be things that I think don't apply to my marriage to be successful, but for other people may be open to it. Like, like people who have like polyamorous relationships. I don't think that's gonna work in my relationship. But for some other folks, that's the glue that keeps it together. And ain't nothing wrong with that as long as both parties is in agreement with it, and that's what rolls. But in my marriage, I don't think that's really for me or for my wife at this point in time where we're at. So I would say,
Yeah, think about it.
yeah, I mean, it could change. It could definitely change. Like, we're approaching 10 years, and the next 10 we could be a completely different couple. And that's the fluidity, and that's one of the answers is like marriages are about discovery. I mentioned that several times,
Yeah.
but it's about being able to develop and grow with one another. And I think most successful marriages, people have had these moments where they went from loving each other at this high peak to not liking each other very much, to rediscovering that they do care about each other, to fighting and getting frustrated, to learning, and then it's like this flow that ends up happening. Most successful marriages that I know, they had those up and down periods, and they've been able to rally around things that kind of made them understand why they got together in the first place. I've had it in my marriage. 2015 is probably the worst year of my life. I don't talk about it a lot. I kind of let that year go because it was just like the worst thing. And then my wife got pregnant in the middle of it. And I'm like, I'm about to leave this woman. And then we have one sexual encounter in like the last 4 months, and she gets pregnant. I'm like, oh my God. Like, like that was how bad it was. I was like, I'm trying to figure out how we're about to do co-parenting with our daughter. We end up having one good day, and boom, she gets pregnant. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. But that's how it is, though. And then it was like, okay, how do I reset this? Like, I'm not in a good space. She's obviously not in a good space, and she's pregnant now. There's some work that needs to be done. I can't change her. I have to work on myself. And in most marriages, that's what ends up happening is both parties have to do some work to continue to be with one another. And for me, it was just rediscovering like what is manhood and masculinity for me, because I was really outside of myself in my marriage, and I had to define what is a husband to me, because what I was doing was not act like a husband. I was just in my emotions to a way too deep extent where it was not even functional in many different aspects. I know I wasn't being a good therapist at the time. I was definitely burnt out at work. At that time I had finished school, so I was done with school, but I was like at home, I just felt like incomplete. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I'm just showing up for my daughter, barely ain't even talking to my wife. It was just miserable. But in order to get through that, I had to focus on myself. So long story short, is in successful marriages, both parties have to work on themselves and define what is a husband and what is a wife. And when they define those two things, do those two things match the expectations that they both have? So that's very important, because what my wife expects from a husband and what I think a husband should be, if those things don't match, that relationship is rocky. And that's how we ended up in that space that we were in. Because I went in with this completely like 50-50 mindset, like I'm gonna be the good guy. And my wife was like, no, bro, I want you to handle them bills. I like working, but if I don't have to, I'll definitely stay home and make this a happy home for everybody. And I was like, no, like you need to pay your half of the rent. She was like, nah, you need to pay all that rent. Like, and then I was like, damn, is this really what she wants? And then we had to change our lifestyle to make sure that if that's what you want, it's going to come with some sacrifices for myself and you. And if this works for us, then we're going to keep it moving forward. And that's what ended up happening. So it's about growth, it's about development, it's about being very transparent with one another. And I think also it's about being able to persevere through the rough patches. No, I don't think any marriage has been perfect where there's been no arguments and no downtimes and none of that. Like when you go through them rough patches, when you can rally and support one another and go and get through those, that's what makes a successful marriage.
I think, man, you hit on a lot of key points, and because I can speak to that person with being married for 15 years,
Hmm.
it is one of the most ugliest, beautiful things I've ever experienced. And when you talk about those ebbs and flows, you're absolutely right. But now sitting back in the seat that I'm in now is I can recognize when we're down, but I can recognize it and not be emotionally down. You know what I mean? Like I can quickly navigate us back up to the top or stay at the top long enough to say, okay, I know we're the unit is down, but I'm mentally still up. So I'm gonna make sure that we get back up because we're gonna make it through. You know what I mean? Because we don't talk about that enough. It's a job. It's work. It's consistent conversating, like you say, evolving as an individual to, hey, what do you want to accomplish this year? Okay, these are the things that I want to do. What do you want to do? Talking to your wife. And then you merge those two worlds together because when you get married, depending on what age, if you're younger, you do go through a thing. You change, whether there's life experiences on your job, you're dealing with different people, you're changing, your environment is changing you. But you come home to this person, not realizing 10 years from now, you married a person 10 years ago, they're not the same person.
No, not at
You know
all.
what I mean? And 5 years from now, they won't be the same person because time has changed them, their experience has changed them, especially if you guys have kids now. So all that takes account of it, man. And I think again, it's just healthy to have this conversation. Last question for you, Brandon. When it comes to money and finances, do you think it's best to keep everything separate, or because you just touched on the second point?
Yeah.
I want to just bring that ask that question is, hey, should we combine and build together, or we separate and divide and conquer?